Okay, so my name is Karen Maynard, and I'm the Public Education Supervisor for Public Works Solid Waste Division in the Waste Management District. And I have Diane Moon on the line. She might help if there's any questions anybody has. And today's topic is Love 'em and Leave 'em. And I don't really have a title slide up, but we'll jump right into the fact that during every presentation, we always talk about how we need to reduce first. So in this case, handling yard waste at home is a way to reduce. And we can't necessarily help the fact that trees generate leaves that end up being yard waste, as opposed to maybe the packaging and other kinds of waste that we can reduce. But there are options and ways to handle that waste at home in order to conserve energy and resources, and it's a more eco-friendly choice. And we'll come to find out it's actually better for your lawn. So, and even though the city offers yard waste collection, there are these other options. So, so that's kind of what we're going to get into today. So, like I said, the phrase is love 'em and leave 'em. And so the definition of that, it's the practice of using yard waste to fertilize and make your yard greener and healthier with better drainage and fewer weeds. So that's kind of the gist of the idea that this is actually good for your yard. And if you hear hammering, I'm sorry, my husband is working in the basement. And so part of the conversation today, we're going to talk a little bit about yard waste collection. I do want to kind of go over, even though the idea is to not use that system all the time, because there are ways to get around that. But also, we'll talk about leaves and pine needles and grass clippings. Backyard composting, I'm not going to go over a lot, but we are definitely going to mention it as a way to use some of the yard waste that you may have. And then some city programs that we offer, local programs for eco-friendly lawn maintenance. So let's get right into it here. All right, so yard waste collection, if you have not been on our website, louisvilleky.gov/yard waste, you can go there, and there's a couple videos that show where the yard waste goes and kind of like the do's and don'ts, what yard waste is, what it isn't. So I just wanted to kind of share, most of the yard waste collected in Louisville goes to Smith Creek Composting, and that is located in Borden, Indiana. Eventually, there's a place in Louisville that they process it to start with and then move it to Borden, Indiana. Yard waste, it's against local ordinance to set it out in plastic bags. And that is ever since, I believe it was 2014, when the ordinance was changed. And that was a measure to keep the yard waste out of the landfill. So if it's not collected in plastic bags at all and can't be, then that means it can be collected in separate trucks, taken straight to the composting facility. We couldn't do that if it was all bagged in plastic bags all the time. So paper bags or just using containers like shown in that picture. And we offer those stickers. That's just a picture of one kind of thrown there on the side, but we have those at our office. If you have city collection, well, even if your private hauler has yard waste collection and doesn't provide a container, you could certainly pick up stickers like that to help to show that that is a yard waste container. And obviously this is for organic waste from the yard, no trash from the yard or plastic items from gardening, like the plastic pots or the plastic plant tags and things like that. And we have some, I think the rules are county-wide, but basically limbs less than 4 feet long, and they should be less than 2 inches diameter. We do offer some programs if you really have an excessive amount of leaves or yard waste that you can't really handle all of it at home or something. And that's our pop-up drop-off events. and our special leaf drop off during the fall season. So like I said, the point of this is to kind of understand better how you can handle this stuff at home and not have to use those services, but I did kind of want to mention that they're available. So I also wanted to share a little bit of information. This is a chart that comes from the EPA's website, and it shows how much yard waste generated is composted, recovered for energy, and landfilled. So over time. So if you kind of look at the far right, that's the most recent information. And the great news is that a lot of the yard waste generated is composted. It's about 35 million tons generated, 24 million tons composted, which is about almost a 70% composting rate, which is pretty good. But that's still almost 9 million tons of the yard waste that went into the landfill, kind of unnecessarily, and a waste of beneficial nutrients to our soils. And we have our own solid waste study that was released in 2018, and that's our local most up-to-date information. And our the far left column there is the one we're kind of focusing on for this, is the yard waste. That's our recovery rate. So if nationally it was about 69%, 69 point something, and then this one is 62.9% recovery rate. So not bad. And this chart shows the top 10 materials sent to landfill for single family residents. And food waste is always number one on charts like this. And that's a whole other topic, especially when you learn about backyard composting. But leaves and grass were number 5. So we just wanted to kind of show, what the residential waste stream looks like. This, at the time of the study, was what was comprised that went to the landfill. Okay, so right now we're in the fall season, and if you have any trees on or near your property, you're probably seeing a lot of leaves. And so fall leaves can actually cause problems on the road. They can definitely clog storm drains. It costs money and energy and resources if you want to collect and remove them. But what we're going to learn about here more is that it's a valuable organic resource. So you don't necessarily want to remove them. You would want to leave them. So options and ways to leave them is actually to mulch in place. And that's, if you mow your lawn normally when the grass is growing, you can mow over your leaves and close that little mower chute, and it kind of keeps them there on the ground and it shreds them up. You can buy a mulching blade specifically to help with that process, but you don't really have to do that. So that's one option that you can do at home. It is beneficial to not let the leaves get too built up. This picture, from what I read, this picture kind of looks like it's a little much. Like you should probably still be able to see some grass there when you mow over it. But it looks also, according to the picture, that they are mowing it just kind of halfway over through the strip. So anyway, so mowing over them and leaving them in place is a good option because it mulches them up and they stay on the lawn. Now, you can also shred them up and place on garden beds. So personally, I have a blower and also a mulcher where it sort of sucks up the leaves and mulches them up and collects them in a bag. And that is real fine. So even though you might have this giant pile of leaves, once you shred them up, your pile gets a lot smaller. And I've placed that into my garden beds that I'm done with for the season right now. And I have a new garden bed that I need to put soil in eventually. I just haven't done it yet, a raised bed. So I'm going to be putting leaves in there first, just as somewhere to put them. But I also filled a garbage, not a garbage can, but like one of my yard waste plastic cans that I have a lid for. I filled that too, and I have it sitting out next to my compost bin for the winter. It's the first year I've actually thought to do this, and I'm excited because I don't like to spend as much time out at my compost bin in the winter. So I'm going to have that right there. So when I bring my kitchen scraps out to the compost bin, that's a lot of the greens that they say, and you're really supposed to put in twice as much browns, which is that more dry material. So I'm going to use my mulched leaves as the brown component throughout the winter. So if I bring out my coffee grounds and my kitchen scraps, then I'll just go ahead and put on some of the mulched leaves at the same time. So that's a great way to use it as well. If you actually have a landscaper come, which I see a lot of my neighbors hiring people to come take care of their yard, you could actually ask them to mulch mow. It's something that they could do for you instead. And of course, we have this leave them. If you have it a little bit too piled up and it stays there, it can inhibit grass growth. So if it's in an area where you have grass, and you're definitely going to want to leave them, but not leave them in a really thick layer pile. That could be bad over time. So those are some options for the leaves. Now, eventually, we're going to roll back around to spring and be back into mowing season for grass. So if you kind of think ahead and think about this, you don't let your grass get too long, or maybe if it is kind of long, you don't cut near as much. You should cut never more than 1/3 of the total height. And you can leave those grass clippings on the lawn too. It's the same thing with the leaves. I know sometimes I've let ours get too bad and I get clumps that get caught up underneath the mower because it's so wet. And I don't like to leave those on the grass on the lawn because they can inhibit the grass growth. So sometimes I do kind of pick up those clumps, but for the most part, I leave it. And if I have to sweep my sidewalk, I just sweep it into the lawn. So that's kind of the same idea with the leaves come spring and summertime. Now, I do not have pine trees in my yard or around my area that I have to take care of, but you might, and pine needles can be used as mulch as well, can be left there. They break down very slowly. If you read about pine trees, depending on what you have in your yard, you might want to kind of look up and do a little bit of research on your own for a specific yard, whatever you have in your yard. But I did read a little bit about acidity in pine needles, but a lot of the resources say that pine needles break down so slowly that it's not going to actually be able to cause your soil to change in pH that quickly because of how slowly they break down. So you might read something that says never leave them on your lawn because of the acidity in them. But what I kind of gathered in all of my reading was that that's not really true because of how slowly they break down. But if it's not a thick enough layer, it's not going to be a mulch that you can really use to keep weeds from growing. But if it is thick enough, it would definitely do that. But either way, it's a way to leave them and not have to collect, use that yard waste program. So I mentioned backyard composting as an option for a way to use some of that leaf litter, the mulched leaves, whatever, little twigs can go in there. So I wanted to take this opportunity to let you know we do have some of these Earth Machine compost bins. That's what that picture is of. We still have some for sale, and that website is there. So if you are interested in purchasing one, they're, I think, $54.95, but they can be purchased on that website. So you may want to jot that down, or when we have this recording up, you can come back and scroll through and get it. But and we have a few accessories available and a few rain barrels available still. So basically you purchase online and then go pick it up at our office. And Diane is usually the one that helps do that. So there goes that hammer again. So the other thing is, I don't want to talk so much about composting because I already did a webinar over the summer about it, and you can go back and watch that recording if you're interested in more backyard composting. Now, this was something I wanted to share because my mother-in-law, actually, this is part of her backyard. She doesn't live out in the country or anything. She lives here in town. But she likes to collect sticks that have fallen from trees in her yard. And I think she has permission from her neighbor to get some of her sticks and things. And she just slowly has created this waddling fence. Now, if you Google waddling fence, there's going to be a little bit more detailed and artistic types of fences, but it's her version of the waddling fence. And I just thought it was a great idea and creative way to leave them in your yard. So anyway, it's just a small little fence and it's cute. And she makes a little path around her garden and her backyard. So that's an option too. You can come up with different creative uses for the sticks and twigs that you might have in your yard. Now, we kind of already mentioned when not to leave them, like for instance, if it's a little too thick or those big grass clumps. But we also don't want you to leave them in the street. You may have seen people or had experience where, leaves naturally fall in the street, yes, but we don't want people blowing leaves into the street purposely or grass clippings. And that picture there shows what happens even if you don't purposely put them there. Over time, if you have any storm drains near your property, you would, this is kind of for our friends at MSD, you would want to keep those clear. So every once in a while, check them. And over time, leaves and things just come down the street with the rain and get caught there. And we want the streets to be able to be clear quickly with those drains. So to clear that out, and then if there's ever any trash or anything, make sure you pull that out separate and recycle or trash it. But that's just kind of a tip there. And as we've mentioned a little bit already, this is just a little bit more about the benefits of leaving them. So for one was the idea that, yes, you may have yard waste collection or an option for transporting your yard waste and dropping it off somewhere, but the more you can leave the material and handle it at home, it reduces energy and greenhouse gas emissions from the vehicles and everything needed to transport yard waste around unnecessarily. It also reduces the need for fertilizer. Now, I am not personally one to fertilize my yard, but a lot of people are, or they might hire someone to do that. And so this is actually a way that you can reduce the need for that, which is good for the environment, also for our groundwater and everything. So, because the clippings actually add nitrogen, and instead of having to use fertilizer to do that. So the leaves themselves and the grass clippings themselves are basically free fertilizer. And let's see, the lawns will need less water. The leaves preserve soil moisture. So, sorry, I did not communicate to my husband well enough of what I was doing today. So the leaves also, especially maple leaves, are good at suppressing weed growth. So you wouldn't necessarily need to use anything, whether it's your own personal energy or other types of chemicals on your lawn to get the weeds out of your lawn. It improves your soil over time. Over winter months, a lot of butterflies and moths, as pupa and caterpillars, they are in the leaf litter, and when you rake them up, you're kind of removing that population. So just as a benefit to the animals, little critters in your yard, and the birds that depend on those critters, it can be a good thing just to leave that some of that leaf litter there. So, and of course, depending on the method you use, you could be reducing pollutants that come from using a lot of your lawn equipment. Now, I know mowing over leaves to mulch them is possibly, if you use a gas-powered mower, you're still using a gas-powered mower. But I want to share with you some of the options that we have locally as programs to help more eco-friendly options for lawn care. So our friends at Air Pollution Control District have lots of programs to help keep the air clean. And one of their programs they call Grow More, Mow Less. They have a statistic there. 1 hour of mowing with your typical gas-powered lawnmower produces the same amount of smog-forming pollution as driving your car for 200 miles. That's pretty bad. So coming up with ways to not have as much grass to mow is a great option. More flower beds, just whatever your yard can do. I don't know. It just depends on what you want to do with your lawn, or if you had a patio or whatever. Just having, deciding that you're going to try to not have so much to mow all of the time is great for our air. And they also provide a program called the Lawn Care for Cleaner Air program. So Louisville residents can get rebates on eco-friendly lawn equipment. And so basically how the program works is if you recycle something that is gas-powered, like a lawnmower, you would get a rebate on a more eco-friendly version of it, like an electric lawnmower or a battery-powered lawnmower. And if you recycle a weed eater, it's the same thing. It goes toward another weed eater or similar product. So, for example, we actually were given a lawnmower. So I had an old junky one, and we recycled it this spring, used the rebate program. Now, some locations acknowledge your rebate right then and there when you purchase, but we went to Lowe's and it did not. So basically, I bought a reel mower, R-E-E-L, reel mower, and it cost $100. And then I sent in my rebate form and I got a check for $50 back. So I basically spent $50 on the reel mower. Now, I don't use that exclusively because our lawn is kind of a little big for it, but I did for a while before it got too out of hand. But it's nice because even I can just kind of pull it out real quick and maybe mow some sections that have that grow a little faster or whatever. So anyway, that to just share how easy the program was, and that it is true. They will pay you to buy eco-friendly equipment. And this is a little picture that shows the difference in air pollution generated for a gas-powered lawnmower versus your electric plug-in and what I was speaking of as a reel mower. So anyway, just great options. And then lastly, I have this page just to kind of show you some resources. I mentioned Air Pollution Control District. They have a Facebook page for Grow More, Mow Less. CARE is Kentucky Air Education, and they're helptheair.org or Help the Air on Twitter and Facebook and everything. I wanted to share Louisville Climate Action Network as a resource. Sarah Lynn Cunningham takes care of that website, and there's a lot of great videos, especially on gardening, with native plants and things like that. So that's a great website to check out. Louisville Grows always has great programs for tree planting and things like that. So you can check them out. And then also Jefferson County Cooperative Extension from the University of Kentucky's Agriculture. They are Jefferson CO Extension on Facebook, and they will every once in a while even post little videos. I remember when we were getting our first frost, they were posting videos about how to take care of your plants, and so that was really handy to follow. So that is basically the webinar here today. So I will maybe a little short. I don't even know what time it is, but I will leave it open here. If anybody has any questions, we do have the chat open or the Q&A Diane has that open. If you want to ask any questions. And if we don't end up with any questions, that's fine. And we can just say goodbye and until possibly next week. Next week is our Spanish webinar. So you may not be interested in it if you don't speak Spanish, but please, if you know any families in our Spanish speaking community or any community groups that might be interested in that, please share. Our communication specialist for Public Works is going to help me out and teach about recycling in Spanish. Sal Melendez will be speaking for that one. And then the next week is the reuse and repurpose. So that'll be fun to get some inspiration about that.
Hey, Karen, I know you were talking about thatch. Did you break the myth about thatch?
Yeah, I didn't really mention that. I kind of held that in as a thing if anybody had a question about it. Let's see. And that is the slide I had for that one. If anybody had a question, I don't know how common that myth is anymore, but sometimes people used to say that thatch, you don't leave your grass clippings on the lawn because it creates thatch or whatever. But this is a little slide kind of showing that that's not exactly how that works. So it's not. It's just a myth. Any other questions? All right, thanks for everybody for coming, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.